Welcome to today's episode of the Life with Impact podcast. It is so exciting that we have been running this series on the podcast called Powerful Parenting. And today is the second last episode of the series. I cannot believe it. It has gone so fast. But this is a podcast that is meant for this community to equip and inspire and encourage. And we want to have longer conversation. We want to really get into some of the more helpful tools and also just have a conversation so you know that you're not alone, that there are people who understand and people who are just like you. And so welcome back, Nicole Daniel.
Thank you so much, Charlene. I'm so excited again to be here today. I cannot believe that it's the second last one that we're recording today.
I know. It's just been such an amazing series, and I so appreciate all the time you've given to just share your expertise with us. So Nicole is a clinical social worker, and she has got so much experience working in school-based settings and just with children. She loves talking to parents, does courses and workshops, and she's the founder of You Matter Therapeutic Support. And so she is just such a gift to us. And she's also a mom, which is, it's just so nice to have a conversation with another mom because, again, like we say, we can talk about theory, but we all know as parents, especially when you still have young kids, it feels like survival. It feels like war sometimes. So we want to really have real conversation and say, hey, I know it's hard, but let's help each other out. Sometimes it's one small little tool that stands out that can really be a game changer for you. So Nicole, thank you so much for being back here. Remember, we have had 6 episodes already. It's been all about emotions, building connections with our children, how to take care of yourself as a parent. And so all of those episodes are available on our YouTube channel. So you can see the full video episode. And you can also go and look on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our Impact website and app. So all of that stuff is there for you to go and check out. Now, into today's conversation, week 7, we're talking about building resilience in our kids. Nicole, can you just tell us what does that mean? What does it mean to build resilience?
Sure. So when we're looking at building resilience, what it really comes down to is for a person's ability to bounce back from the face of adversity. And I mean, let's face it, life is full of challenges, and this isn't something that we can avoid. There is so many different challenges now than sometimes what we would have faced growing up as well. And so really building resilience is encouraging our children to grow up in a supportive environment where they're able to navigate these trials and errors. And I think, something that I've seen happen more and more in the profession as well is just parents so badly, and I mean, I've been guilty of it too, parents so badly want to safeguard their children. And I mean, we all want the best for our kids at the end of the day. But what happens is when we are trying to protect our children from facing these difficult times, we're actually hindering them from growing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think about a baby that needs to learn to walk. Imagine if you just carried that child forever, they would never learn how to walk. It's just so inherent in a child's development that they need to struggle in order to learn, right?
Yes, exactly.
So let's talk about how we can actually support our children in this process and their developments.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things it will almost feel like a recap, but we need to create that supportive environment. And in order to do that, we need to be able to ensure that we are building those healthy, meaningful connections with our children, letting them know that when they're going out and facing all the difficult things in the world, they can come home, and home should be a safe base. Yeah. We're never going to get it right all the time, but I think, when we look at even attachment, it's about the most familiar experience, the most common experience that they have. So we want to create those supportive environments. We also want to allow them to try new experiences, try new opportunities. Yeah. I mean, when I was growing up, it wasn't something that was unusual for us to be climbing trees and being outside and doing these adventurous things, trying to figure out what the world means. And whereas now it's not like that. Now we are so concerned about protecting our children that we end up going to the extreme and trying to keep them in a confined space to make sure that they are safe, that this is where they are, we know where they are. And that doesn't actually help in the long run.
Yeah.
And we also want to try and, one of the biggest goals is, when they are trying these new things or they're learning or they, just living life, we want to praise their efforts over their outcome.
Yeah.
And that so often doesn't happen. So often we are so overly concerned about what they're going to achieve, what marks they're going to get, how they're going to do in their extramural activities. We really need to buckle down and focus on, what effort are they putting in? Because we're not doing that enough. We need to support every bit of effort that these children are putting in to their daily lives so that they know this is what they need to do to really just go through the motion, go through the tough stuff. It's so important. Yeah. And also just understanding that, when we look at emotional intelligence again, and that whole power of yet, we need to know that it's not okay now, but one day it will be. And there's that yet. It's not okay yet, but it will be. And one day we're going to work towards that. And really encourage them to navigate those tough experiences. Yeah. And obviously being mindful as parents, how do we experience failures and disappointments?
Yeah, no, and I think it's so important to, again, have that end goal in mind because we just want to protect them now and we're fearful now, but I think about what it will be like for them as an adult and how difficult it will be for them to do hard things. I mean, whether we like it or not, there will be a day where they'll leave the house and they're going to have to take care of their own finances and they're going to have to go through hard things and they're going to probably get married maybe and have kids and they're going to have to be able to deal with the challenges that come. And for me, it's better that they build some resilience slowly over time than have to learn it the very hard way as an adult.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's so, so important. And I think this is probably one of the most important conversations we'll have. But again, with that foundation of it is an emotional connection, it's really creating a safe space for them and communication.
Yes, absolutely.
As well. One other thing I wanted to say is I remember working at a school and we did a little course and I remember the person saying, instead of just helping your child climb down from something, they'll cry, I'm stuck. Say to them, okay, what plan can we make? How are we going to get down? And then talk through the steps of getting them down.
Yes.
And I so love that. It's something I try to implement, but sometimes I forget because, sometimes it's just easier to help them out.
Absolutely, yes.
But I realize how important it is for them to problem solve on their own. And a big element of that is also perseverance, being able to endure hard things. I mean, the Bible even talks about that. Talk a bit more about this perseverance and how we can help our kids.
Yeah. So perseverance is so critical for a person just developing throughout life. Without the ability to persevere, we end up just giving up on things. And we really don't want that for our kids. I mean, we don't even really want that for ourselves.
No.
We want to know that when things are tough, we need to be able to just buckle down and put one foot in front of the other. And, also acknowledge those times where sometimes when it gets too difficult to put one foot in front of the other, there's going to be times where we need to stand still for a moment. And it's not about stopping, it's just about pausing. And I think it's so important that we need to be able to communicate that sense of perseverance. Communicate that sense of, I know this is tough. And again, this comes down to your emotional regulation. I can see this is tough for you. And, that makes sense. I want you to know that I believe in you and I know that you can do this. Yeah. I mean, it's the same as when, kids are doing studies, for example. We cannot study for them. Yeah. We're not in that exam room for them. But what we can do is equip them with a sense of perseverance to know that it is tough now, but we're going to get through this. I'm on your side. I've got your back. One step in front of the other. We've got this. Yeah. Because without that, all we're doing is encouraging a sense of giving up. And we don't want to do that. It's so difficult. We want to, like I said, we want to do the best that we can for our children. And we want them not to struggle. I mean, really, I don't know of many parents that would want their child to be through trials and tribulation and to have heartache and struggle. Yeah. But the thing is, we cannot take that away. And there will come a time where we are no longer around. And we want our children to really actually just thrive, not survive. Yeah. And, one of the things that we see that's so difficult when it comes to perseverance is having that excessive screen time. And I know, sometimes we will think, what on earth does screen time have to do with perseverance? But it is so important to understand that link, because the minute we look at excessive screen time for our children, the thing is that is immediate gratification. It's that instant reward, whether it is gaming or scrolling through social media, that doomsday scrolling. Yeah. It's this fast-paced information being received. There's this immediate gratification, and, the reward is so quick that they're not learning that we have to actually go through difficult things. And so often, because there's so much screen time, what's happening is that our children are finding it so difficult to do the tasks, do the crafts and the activities that actually require a little bit more effort and a little bit more time. So whether it is that they're doing a craft activity, or they're building a puzzle, or they're doing something that they're building or creating, they struggle with that. And then obviously that feeds into their schoolwork. So now they are struggling to focus, they're struggling with their attention span in class, because their brains are starting to become wired for that sense of immediate gratification. And, in the long run, it's actually just detrimental towards them. So we need to be able to give them activities and tasks and, things where they can set a goal that they actually have to persevere for. Yeah. Save your money over time. If you're wanting this thing, we're not going to go to the shop this weekend and buy it, or go to the shop after school and buy it. I'm going to encourage you to work towards saving towards that, and know that if this is the end outcome that you want, you need to persevere to be able to get to that desired outcome.
It's funny because I have this conversation with my daughter a lot, because her favorite thing to say lately is, I'm bored. And she's bored after 1 minute of standing in a queue at the shop.
Yes.
And then I've also told her, bored is actually a good thing, because it's an opportunity for you to think creatively. And she's like, Mom, I know you said bored is a good thing, but I don't like it.
Yes.
But I think that is part of the thing. It might not be that they need to do something like hard, as in hard work, but sometimes it's just allowing them to be bored. And again, like you said, delayed gratification. And I think it's so important to just remind us we're doing this for the good of our children.
Yes.
It's not about toughening them up. We said from the beginning that is not the heart here. It's about giving them the tools to really get through life and do the best they can.
No, exactly. We want to encourage that endurance. It was amazing. I heard someone speak a little while back about how frightening it is that nowadays we have parents that are, booking appointments for their children, their adult children, scheduling interviews for their children. I was so surprised to hear it, but, there's even reports of parents going into interviews with their children to make sure everything is running so smoothly. And, in the long run, again, we're not there forever. And we cannot allow that dependency to take over in our home, because we are supposed to be the parent. We are supposed to be the solid foundation for them to face difficulty and come home to know how to regulate and to actually just bounce back through that.
Yeah, I actually saw a graph once. It looks almost like an X, but it's at the bottom corner. It's saying, it being hard now means that in the future it's going to be easier, or if it's easy now, it's going to be hard later in the future. And so we have to choose our hard. Are we going to just make it a little bit harder, or just push them a little bit so that it's easier when they're older, or the other way around? And again, it's for the benefit of our children. Now, you spoke about us modeling this to our children. Can you speak a bit more about that? I find that interesting.
Absolutely. So, again, like we spoke in one of our previous episodes, how we behave and how we interact with certain things, it shows our children how they need to do things. We don't want to give them a helpless mindset. We want to give them a growth mindset.
Yes.
And the best way we can do that is by being that ourselves. So, one of the biggest things I would speak to parents about is, how are you facing these obstacles? When things don't go according to plan, how are you handling it? How are you communicating, one, to yourself, and two, how are you communicating externally towards others? Yeah. Because it makes such a huge difference. So if we are there are times where we will feel frustrated and feel overwhelmed and feel, stressed or flustered. How are we dealing with that?
Yeah.
So if we are running late in the morning, as I said to you earlier, I'm not a morning person at all. So mornings are always an interesting thing for us in our home. And I think, it just gives you that moment when we are mindful and aware of what's happening in the here and now.
Yeah.
It gives us those opportunities to just kind of check in and say, hang on, maybe I can deal with this differently. So when you're having these difficult times, sometimes we need to slow down and model that to say it out loud. Sure, this was a tough morning, but you know what? It's okay. We're in the car. We're on our way now. It's okay. We're going to take it one step at a time. Because, children don't hear our thoughts. They hear our words, and more so they hear our actions and our behavior.
Yeah.
So when we're facing these difficult times, how are we dealing with it? When we deal with failure, how do we communicate it? When our child experiences failure or even disappointment, how is our response to them? So, for example, one of the biggest things that we often see is when they are, because we're currently so academic focused and academically driven, when they don't get the result that it's more so what they don't want. If they get a result that they feel they would have wanted more, instead of saying, I told you to study, I told you this is what you were supposed to do, it's not going to actually help. All we're doing is creating more guilt and shame.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how we build that resilience and that growth mindset is to say, that I'm hearing you. That makes sense that you would have liked something different. What do you think you could have done differently?
Yeah.
What would you like to do differently for next time? Is there a way I can support you to do this differently? So whether it is that, we need to get a timer while they're studying, for example. But what we want to do is we want to continuously communicate, that sense of growth, that sense of next time, this is what we can do differently, what you can do differently, and communicate that belief in that person.
Yeah.
But it starts with us. We need to be able to handle stress and overwhelm, which is so rife at the moment. How do we handle it?
Yeah.
Are we regulating? Are we breathing through these things? Are we saying, that sense of radical acceptance? I can't change the situation right now. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to see how best I can navigate through this difficult time.
Yeah.
And that also comes down to, the unfortunate situations of death and loss.
Yeah.
How do we actually approach these difficult things? Do we absolutely withdraw? And there are times of withdrawal and times of reconnecting, because we can't hide that from our children. We need to show them that when things are tough, this is how we deal with it.
Yeah.
Because that sense of I need to be strong for my child, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It shouldn't even exist, because what are we then modeling? We're modeling when something goes difficult, you need to hide it, or you need to shut down or withdraw. And we don't want that. We want to show our child this is painful. While we're doing this painful situation and going through this painful time, I'm going to show you how we can figure this out.
Yeah.
And not every day is going to be the same, and not every moment is going to be the same, but we're going to give it a try. So really just reflecting on how we handle stuff and showing our children how they can do things in a healthy way is so crucial.
Yeah, no, I mean, we spoke about that in the previous weeks as well. We spoke about leading the way,
Yes.
which was just this idea that we need to model vulnerability as well to our children.
Yes.
And classically, we've been taught to suppress, and we must almost model the ideals. So our parents didn't know to be vulnerable and share their story and say, hey, I struggled with this. And really just be honest about those things. And that's what they need to do.
Yes.
But we know that that's not helpful, because you put your parents on a pedestal, or you realize, or you see the disparity between what they say and how they behave, and then you think of them as hypocrites, and maybe that causes you to rebel. The point is that we need to be honest with our children, because that is actually giving them tools. So not just be honest, but actually model, how do we deal with this? We spoke even about conflict in your marriage. Don't have a full-on like crazy fight in front of your children, maybe.
Yes.
But if you have something to talk out, don't shy away from discussing it in front of your children, and showing them how you could forgive one another and talk
Yes.
it out and make a plan and say, hey, this is what I should have done differently. I shouldn't have said that.
Yes.
That's actually giving them tools that they can take
Absolutely.
into their future. And the other thing that I thought of while you were talking is that what it's also doing is encouraging intrinsic motivation. So in other words, they're self-motivated. They're
Yes.
not just behaving because you're there to keep them in check. We want our children to have a sense of pride in what they do, or a sense
Yes.
of self-motivation. Like I
Yes.
want to do my best because that's what's in me. It's not because my parents are watching. I mean, how many people do you also know that go off the rails when a parent isn't really there to keep an eye on them? We don't
Yeah.
want that for our kids. They mustn't just do the right thing because they fear us.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, there's a conflict with the reward system as well. But I think it's really about celebrating their efforts, celebrating the things that they can actually do.
Yeah.
If someone, and I know this is a little bit different in terms of resilience, but giving the child that sense of worth, that if they are helping around the house, give them that recognition.
Yeah.
Not because you're going to give them pocket money because they're helping.
Yeah.
And I think something that I just want to mention, perhaps in closing, what we really need to be so mindful of is we want to be real and honest and congruent with our children.
Yeah.
But we have to always bear in mind the boundaries and those lines that we cannot cross. So we want to be able to demonstrate to our children more so in sense of emotions. This is how I'm feeling and this is how I'm going to get through it. But often where the line is blurred is not children are aware of, intense family conflicts, or they're aware
Yes.
of the extreme details of loss or of traumas, and they don't need that. It needs to be child appropriate.
Yes.
And children don't need to know when families are struggling financially. And I
Yes.
often
So
see that.
important, yeah.
Because they don't need that. They need to know that, okay, mom's feeling concerned, mom or dad need to communicate. I've got some worries. I've got some things that I'm worried about. But you know what? It's okay. It's my job to sort that out, not your job.
Yeah.
And you don't need to look after me. It's my job to look after you. And just remember, I've got this. I'm going to figure this out, and we're going to be fine. Because we need to communicate that sense of hope and not putting our stress onto them, our worries onto them, because they actually don't have the capacity to deal with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I think that is so important what you're saying. Don't put things on them that they cannot carry.
Yes.
Because I also know when children get older, then some parents also rely on them emotionally to encourage them.
Absolutely.
So we need to be very wary of getting to that
Yes.
place. It's really you're sharing and being vulnerable for the sake of the child, of
Yes.
modeling something specific to them. And if you don't know where the line is, ask the Holy Spirit to also show you.
Yes.
Ask the Holy Spirit to convict you if you feel like, okay, maybe I'm oversharing too much.
Yes.
Or sometimes our spouses can keep us in check as well. I know my husband is usually the one to say, hey, I think you're being a little bit too nice right now. Like you need to just hold back,
Yes.
or not hold
Put in a
back,
boundary.
but put in a boundary.
Yes.
Because as a mom, I just want to give my kids everything,
Yes.
and then sometimes let them walk all over me because I'm being too nice, too soft.
Yes.
So let's allow our spouses to balance us out there as well. But Nicole, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been such a good one and such an important one. And I think the biggest takeaway for me maybe is also just this idea of having a growth mindset. And that's
Yes.
what we want our children to learn, is how to be okay with failure and actually just redefine failure. For me, it's like actually not showing up at all is probably the only way you could fail, but just trying your best.
Yeah.
And studies have showed that people that are more committed to the process do better in the long run as well than people who are so scared of failure and the results. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Nicole.
Thank you so much, Charlene.
We're going to be back with the next episode, and it will be the final episode, episode 8, all about Through the Storm, and we're going to just also sum up a little bit of this series. Remember, you can go catch all these episodes, the previous episodes from episode 1 right through to today's episode 7 on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, even our Impact app and website. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.